Hey guys, looks like I'm live. Hey everybody. So I posted that I was going live about an hour, so here I am. I don't know if you guys saw my post announcing that I was coming on live, but I am here to talk to you today about teens and share with you a little bit about some of the things that I've learned, some of my observations, and also to answer any questions that you may have right now. Um, I have immersed myself over the last year really deeply, although I've been doing this work, oh my gosh, for 20 something years. But really immersed myself over the last year into adolescent development from a psychological perspective, and also from a biological, physical perspective too. And all the education that I have, the self-directed education that I've been engaged in has really supported the work that I've been doing with teens. So I'm really driven to sort of get into the nuances of, teen development, social development. And, I just want to be the best resource that I possibly can for the teens that I work with. So let me see here. Does it say that I'm live? Is this? I don't see that anybody's here. It says that I'm public. So if you're here watching this and if you see me live, will you please give me a thumbs up or let me know? Because I am not sure that I'm actually live. It says nobody's watching. Ah, that's sad. Are you guys just not interested in talking about teens or oh, okay, there it is. I see that there are three people. Okay,
So
there
you
you
guys
go.
just not interested?
Oh, there you go. Okay, so hi, hey Terry, thank you for popping in and letting me know that at least it's working because there's nothing worse than just chatting to myself. Although I do spend a lot of time doing that too. All right. Hey Terry, hey Alexis, thanks for letting me know. Yeah. So I just recently finished up one of the 12-week courses that I facilitate. And I work with teens. It's a 3-month course, and that really allows me to develop a deeper relationship with the teens that I'm working with. And all of the teens that I work with, I can't really say, um, I mean, there may be one or two exceptions, but for the most part, it's really about creating that relationship with them. It's really about showing them, demonstrating that I really care, that there is someone listening to them, and that there's a safe person and a safe space to talk about things that they'll be listened to without being judged. And, I know parents do the best job they can. I'm a parent. I was parented, although I won't talk much about that. Um, but the, but the thing is, right, our parents and as we parent our young people, we have those inbred biases, right? Because as a parent, we've seen our teen from birth, in most cases, through all the different stages of development. And we've got this sort of collective experience of our child, and we know the things that they've developed and changed and moved through, right? And so we can't help but to see them through the lens of this whole sort of complete stage of what we know about them. And teens are in a stage of change. Like that is what the teen brain and biologically what they're wired to do. They're wired to change. They're wired to you know, focus on particular interests, to step outside of their comfort zone, to take risks, to re-examine what identity is and try on new identities. And us as parents of teens, we see all of it, and if we see a teen suddenly interested in like punk rock, like I was, like, you know, okay, but you're not a punk, you're not rebellious, you're not like, you have these ideas of what they are up until that point. And instead of allowing them to sort of expand and step into these new identities and try them on in a safe space without thinking, a lot of times parents dismiss what it is that they're stepping out to explore, right? Not because they're trying to be mean, but because we're looking at it through a different lens. And what I've noticed about stepping into the lives of teens and partnering with them, that's the first thing that I say to them is, look, guys, I'm not here to tell you what to do. I am here to partner with you, right? I'm an adult. I don't know any more than you, but I do have different life experience. And because I'm in my 50s, a lot of life experience, but it doesn't make me an expert on you. It makes me somebody who has rich, experiences in other places that, other people may not have. But with all that, I'm stepping in and partnering with you. And there's more of an ease in that relationship. So like the mentor, adult that's not their parent, right? Who doesn't know who they were up until that point, who sees them for this moment of now, gives them space to exhale. Like, oh, you know what? I really want to try these new pronouns, or, like, this style of music is like something that I don't share with my parents, or whatever the thing is, like they're thinking of pursuing singing, and maybe that wasn't something that they did up until that point, and they're sort of still keeping it hidden. But with a new adult that really is showing them that it's safe. It's safe to be who you are in this moment, and I'm going to celebrate who you are in this moment without judgment. Like, I've got no reason to judge anybody. And that just by the virtue of stepping into a relationship with them and creating fun, right? Creating a space where it's safe, there's fun, there's playfulness, the engagement is really different. And I'm not even talking about the content of the stuff that I facilitate over the 12 weeks. Like, again, relationship is so important, right? I see a question from Terry. Yeah, so the teens that I work with, I facilitate two courses. One course I facilitate with my son, who just thrives working with the younger group. And that is from 10 to about 13. And so these are the younger teens and tweens. So that's one age group. And like I said, I facilitate an 8-week course with them, with my son. But where I just like, I light up, and my heart is in really facilitating and working with young people. It's usually ages 14. 14 could either be on the younger group or the older group, depending on the maturity of and the needs of the 14-year-old, but usually 15 to 25. Like that age range is where, like, I thrive. That's where I'm really in my best space, and I really connect. An adult to adult or young adult relationship, and it's the development of a beautiful relationship, right? So, hey, Noreen. Yeah, I know you have the same passion. I love that. So the benefits of having an adult in their life, that validates, that sees them, that hears them, that is not that judgmental filter that unfortunately a lot of times parents that haven't, and I know you're doing the best you can, but sometimes, there's a filter of judgment. Or even if there isn't that filter of judgment from the parents, the teens feel as if they're being judged or scrutinized by their parents. And even if that's not the parents' intention, it creates that separateness. Now, what I've learned from a biological perspective is this is the time where socially the teens are, or we'll say adolescence really is 12 to 25, but the brain socially they're starting to individuate, because from an identity perspective, up until adolescence they are figuring how they fit into this den, the den of the family, family of bears, and bears, they all have their sort of social roles. You've got the mama bear and the papa bear, and the kid bears, and then there's different roles within that structure too. If you're a kid, growing up in a family, I'm the old one, and so I have to show, so there's different roles that kids take on through their developmental stage. But as they start into adolescence, they're starting to say, wait a minute, my identity is not just who I am in this den, this family structure. It's who am I in the world? And for 8 years, most of you guys know, Mirel and I, my son and I, we facilitated teens in these immersive learning retreats around the world. So, that really gave them the opportunity to step outside of their comfort zone and examine the world and decide who they were in relation to the world outside of them. Because who you are in your comfortable environment of home and the comfortable environment that you grew up in and community and so forth, you sort of have a pretty good idea through your upbringing. My role is the family on the end of the block who, is friends with many families on the block, who, whose parents drive these cars, who's expected to go to these schools or to be homeschooled or to be this in the community or whatever. You have a pretty good idea in terms of the linear development. But when you step outside into different cultures without your family in your adolescence, you are outside of your comfort zone and present and forced to either consciously or unconsciously decide on the identity of who you are. And a lot of times, we've got these sort of archetypical roles that we all play, and we wait to see what the community is filled with, to see where their holes are. We've got the joker, and we've got the intellect, and we've got the sporty person, we've got the person who's sort of nerdy, and even though these archetypes are big generalizations, culturally it is part of the environment that we all exist in. So we sort of try these things on. And when I'm working with teens, I notice sometimes they're cycling through different identities in both the coursework and within the community of the course that we're all together for the 3 months, or 2 months if it's the younger group, or within their lives outside. And it's natural as day to try on these identities. So what do you do if you're a teen and you've always wanted to be the entertainer, but you've had an older sibling that sort of always took the limelight? You sort of make yourself smaller, but in a different environment, you could step and try these new kinds of identities. And a lot of times as parents, like we're busy, right? We got kids, we got work, we got life, we got pandemic, we got crazy world that we're in. It's hard for us sometimes as parents to miss the subtle nuances of the stages of the things that our teens are trying out. And this is the time in their life where they really need to be seen, heard, understood. And this is that form of validation. And for those of us who grew up without being validated, who didn't grow up or who grew up not being seen, heard, or understood by parents or by any other adult, that for me developed into a lot of sort of traumatic attachments, and that was expressed through years and years and years of people pleasing, and years and years and years of making myself small, and years and years of different kinds of trauma expressions until I started to heal this. And so one of the things that I talk about or facilitate with teens is, number one, normalizing mental health. And I don't always call it mental health. I call it self-inquiry, because sometimes the impression of talking about mental health is implying that something's wrong. And if you've got a teen who is struggling to sort of find their space in the world, that exploration in their mind can be kind of turned on themselves as self-judgment, like I should know who I am, I'm not, I'm going to do this in private, I'm that sort of thing. On the other hand, our culture and society has normalized anxiety and depression, and so there are people that are experiencing a lot of anxiety or a lot of depression, and and this is sort of this thing that I'm going to say next is probably going to get me in trouble, but because it is so normalized and a lot of teens are legitimately experiencing this, it is a form of it becomes a form of hiding behind, like, I can't do that, I've got anxiety, I can't do that, I've got depression. And instead of looking at the anxiety and depression as something that we live with and we utilize tools to help us move through life, it's a form of shutting down. And again, legitimately, there's a lot of teens that are experiencing many of these conditions. I've worked with teens who have eating disorders that are doing self-harm. I've worked with teens that have lots of anxiety. I've worked with teens that have, severe depression. And sometimes within families, and again, as parents, we do the best we can with what we've got. But sometimes as families, we stop seeing our teens with depression or with anxiety as a human being. We see them as a person with anxiety, and we make accommodations for them without providing tools and support on the other side, right? Because how do we live with anxiety? How do we live with depression? How do we live with the feelings that cause us to self-harm? How do we live with those things? Well, we need to manage those things. And I still see you as a full human being. And and even when parents do see their teens as full human beings who have, anxiety or depression or any of these challenges, a lot of times the teens don't feel like they're seen as somebody who, is whole. So when I work with teens, I have none of that because I don't have the whole history of working with them, right, or parenting them. I see them for a person right now. And the right now is so important, especially in a teen's life, because the part of the brain that processes consequences is not fully developed. And so, as we know, teens are more adverse to risk taking. And if they're not processing consequences, that means they're very present and in the moment, with the exception of those who are have the challenge of lots and lots of anxiety. Lots and lots of anxiety takes you out of present thinking and processing and puts you into future thinking or processing. And I've got tools to help bring kids or teens back into the present and be more present with their surroundings and manage these challenges, right? So, yeah, just being an adult who sees and hears and understands teens is one of those things that lights me up and allows me to really be a support, be that person that is there for them. One of the other things I wanted to talk about is, I just touched on using tools. One of the amazing thing about tools is teaching them in a neutral space. Here's a tool for, let's just say, a tool for reframing. So we all have beliefs about things that happen to us. And one of the challenges that I give them or exercises we work through is, like here would be a very specific way of reframing, write down on a piece of paper. Okay, so pull out your notebook, write down on a piece of paper the worst thing that has happened to you. And they start writing furiously, and there's usually an easy way of identifying because that comes up. There's an emotional charge and a response. And we talk about like the emotions that are attached to that thing. Then I challenge them to find 10 ways that that's the best thing that's happened to them. And they're like, wait, Lainie, that's not. And I say, just wait, take a deep breath. Let's just go into it and see what you can do. And as they're writing and exploring and pushing the boundaries of their perception, they're starting to experience what it feels like to reframe. And we make it fun and challenging, and there's a lot of laughter in it. And that's just an example of one of the many, 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 many tools and exercises that we do. But when I hear from a teen, 2 months later, hey, Lainie, and I get this random note, remember that reframing thing that we did? Oh my God, let me tell you what just happened. This happened in my life, and then I reframed it, and everything about that experience was different in that moment. And suddenly I realized that I had the power to use these tools. And that to me is like, that's why I do this work. If I had these tools when I was a teen, oh my God, I wonder how much less craziness I would have had in my growing up. But anyway, so teaching tools, facilitating tools, creating a safe space to move through a lot of these challenges, and seeing teens or the young people that I work with as whole. That's so different, right? In partnership, you partner with a whole person, and the feeling that washes over you when you know that you're being seen, heard, and understood is powerful. So anyway, I just wanted to check in and share with you why I do what I do, what some of the things are that I do, and to see if you guys have any questions. Again, I work with teens, tweens. I have 2 new courses, or 2 new cycles. I guess it's the same course, but the cycle is starting next week. I have space for teens and tweens. It's the last course that I'll be teaching for 2021. And if you want to support your teens and tweens with tools, It's about inviting them to have a safe relationship with another adult and within a safe community to show up and be themselves. And if there's any way I can support you in all of that, let me know. So I will just put your comments into the chat and let me know if you have any questions, and let me know if you're interested in more information. I can send you the links. All right, guys, that's it for me now. Thank you. Bye.